Okay, this is the second part to our hot foot bath. We've had a very simple one. Emmanuel's had his feet in the hot water. We actually didn't show you that when you finish off that hot foot bath, you pour some cold water over the feet, put the feet to the outside of the tub, dry them off, and don't put his feet on a cold cement floor, but put his socks on and his shoes on, and off he can go. And we'll show you that as we finish this part of this next phase of the hot foot bath. We're actually notching it up a bit. We're going to give him a full fever treatment, and we're going to do it in 2 steps. The second step, some of you might not want to try that, but you'll have the idea, and if you want to, you can do it that as well. Now, you have your patient. In this case, he is stripped down to either he's nude or he's in his underwear, but he's gotten rid of his pants. For convenience of this demonstration, Emmanuel's keeping his pants on. What I'm going to do, I'll walk you through it first, and then we'll go ahead and do it. I'll have Emmanuel, when I'm ready, I'll have him stand up. I will take a sheet, just a bed sheet, and I will wrap him in that sheet. You'll notice that he's already sitting in the chair and that there is a blanket already draped over the chair. I will help him sit back in the chair when he's draped in the bed sheet, and then I will wrap him with the blanket. After he's wrapped in the blanket, I will pull over the tub, which has hot water in it, and we will place his feet in the hot water, and then we'll pull the blanket around over the tub. Now, to keep the blanket and the sheet from falling into the water, I've just taken a piece of cardboard and I've cut out a U, and I'll place this on top of the hot tub to help keep the sheet and the blanket from falling into the water. It just makes it a little bit cleaner as you do your treatment. As the treatment goes along, the water will probably cool off, and I will have to add some hot water, and I can either do that with an electric kettle sitting nearby, or I have a pitcher nearby that has some hot water in it, and I'll just simply add the hot water that way. You'll notice that when I add the hot water, I will have him put his feet to one side, and as I add the hot water, I will stir that hot water to keep that temperature evenly distributed so it doesn't burn his feet, because he will not be taking his feet out for the duration of this treatment. Now, as we go along, he's going to start getting hotter and hotter. I'll watch for perspiration to start building on his forehead. Once that starts, I might offer him some water to drink through a straw. He won't be able to use his hands, so I'll have to hold the cup and the straw for him to drink from. I'll also, as he begins to sweat, I will take a cloth, a face cloth like this, and I will simply immerse it in the ice cold water that I have here and wring it out, and I will then place it either on his forehead like this, or I will wipe his face and take the perspiration off of his face. You'll notice too that when I actually put the sheet on him and set him back in the chair, that I'm going to use a towel, an extra towel, to put around his neck to catch the perspiration from his face. When I'm all done with this treatment, I'm going to come along with some ice cold water, and I'm going to lift one foot out of the tub at a time, and as I lift it out, I will pour this ice cold water over his feet. Stand back, you might get a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction here, and I'll set it outside the tub onto the towel. I don't want to set his feet onto a cold surface, because that can change the reaction that he'll have from this treatment. I'll then do the other foot. I'll pull the tub to one side, and at that point I can do a couple things. I can take some mittens, some terry cloth mittens or some cotton mittens, and I can rinse them out in cold water, or wring them out in cold water, and I can give him a brisk brush massage starting at his feet and moving towards his trunk. I'll do the same with his hands, moving towards his trunk, and finish on the chest. I can either do that, or I can also ask him to go to the shower and take a tepid shower. Now, his body is still hot. Maybe you've raised the temperature to 101, 102 degrees Fahrenheit, and he'll want to lay down after this treatment, because he's going to continue to sweat. Now, when you lay him down in the bed, it's good to put some plastic underneath the sheet, because he'll sweat and he can easily soak the bed. So the little precaution there to save some laundry later. Just put the plastic underneath the sheet before you bring him into the bed. Once he's in the bed, you'll put a sheet on top of him, and you might put 1, 2, or more blankets on him to maintain that temperature that he has so he doesn't get chilled, and slowly his temperature will come down, and probably he will go to sleep, and leave him there for 20 minutes or more. Okay, Emmanuel, I'm going to have you stand up, and I want you to move towards the front of this towel here, and I'm going to drape you with this sheet. This is a fairly large sheet. You might not need something quite so large, but you want to be able to start on one side. I'm going to move over to this side. Behind him, I'm going to bring the sheet around in front of him like this. Catch the sheet here. Bring the front around like this. Then I'm going to drape this over his shoulder, and I'm going to bring the other side of the sheet around him. Pull it around in the front. He's going to look a little bit like a mummy when you're done. And being all wrapped up like this, it's going to be kind of awkward for him. He could easily trip as he's moving around. So what you want to do is you want to actually help him step back into his chair. Now I'm going to have you step back, Emmanuel, step by step. I've got you. And go ahead and sit down, and I'll help catch you so you won't worry about falling. Very good. Okay, we've got him now in the chair. I want to now put a towel around his neck to catch that perspiration, and also to keep that heat in. We want him to get warm. This is a fever treatment. So I'll take a towel, I'll fold it up, like this. And I will put that around his neck. Now at this point, you now take the blanket. He's strictly dependent on you. He can't do anything for himself. You can see his arms are locked in. So you're going to have to do the rest of this treatment without any help from anybody else. Clearly you can see that 2 people are involved in this treatment. The patient and the therapist. And the patient can't do anything for himself. So bring it around the front. Once you have it on one side around, then just come around with the other side. And once you have it around him, you can then tuck it in on the side so it doesn't come loose. You've basically created a tent for him. And this is going to serve as a steam tent essentially. But we'll show you that you can actually do one more step in this process. Okay, he's all wrapped up. Now I'm coming around to the front, and I'm going to pull this tub of lukewarm or hot water over here. By the way, I've mentioned the book Home Remedies. In there, it actually gives you the temperature gradients you'll want to use. You'll need a thermometer as well to check the temperature if you're doubtful. Again, your hand is the main thermometer so that you know that you're not going to burn him. If you have a high tolerance, ask your patient, is this too hot for you? Can you take a little more hot water? Keep communicating with them so that so he doesn't think you're doing what you're supposed to do while at the same time you're burning him. Okay, while you're at this point, you can then take the blanket and the sheet underneath, and you can bring them up onto his knees. Got a little bit of your foot there. I know your feet are in there somewhere. Here we are. Just expose the feet, and again, you're going to use your hand to lift his feet into the tub. Put your hand underneath so that as he goes into the tub, you can tell whether it's too hot or not. Place one foot in, reach over, and take the second foot again and put it in. Once you got the feet in the tub, you can set it back a bit. Here I have my cardboard yoke. I simply put it across the tub, the foot tub, and then I bring down my sheets, and lastly my blanket, and his feet are now in the hot water, and he has begun his treatment. Now, depending on the temperature, depending on your patient, It may take 5 or 6 minutes, but very soon you'll start noticing some perspiration developing on the forehead. You'll notice that they're breathing a little bit more aggressively. And as soon as that you notice the perspiration on the forehead, that's the signal for you to start the cold compress to the head. Now, if you're uncertain again, you can start by taking a body temperature before you begin, and then as your patient develops this fever, this artificial fever, you can keep checking his temperature. And when you see it coming up to around 101 Fahrenheit, at that point, even if they haven't started to perspire yet, you can begin with the cold water. And so you wring it out in this cold water, and you keep his head cool. A good way to start this whole treatment in the beginning is to give your patient some hot water to drink. That gets his body temperature internally starting to work. But now you switch over to cold water, and you will apply that over the forehead like this. You can apply an ice bag to the head if need be, or you will continue to just bathe the head throughout the rest of the treatment, because you do not want him to get his head hot. There's a good chance that he would end up with a headache from the excess heat in his head if you don't keep mopping his head. So while you're holding the head, just wipe down the sweat around his ears, around his neck, across his eyes and nose, and keep wiping his face off and keeping the head cool at all times. Again, you might want to give him some water to drink. He can't drink it himself, so you'll have to hold the cup for him and let him drink from the straw. Now, this treatment can go on for anywhere up to 20 minutes, depending on the age of your patient. Again, I would recommend that you check in the book Charcoal Remedies for the duration of the treatment for small children and on up to adults. But for an adult, you can expect anywhere from 12 to 20 minutes of treatment, and that brings the temperature up very nicely. And then the body is able to you've artificially created this fever, the person's experiencing a rise in blood pressure, a rise in body temperature. He starts laboring with his breathing, that increases his heart rate, that increases the oxygenation of the blood, it increases the circulation. It increases circulation of blood out to the exterior to try and radiate off this heat. The blood is bathed by these fixed macrophages. These white blood cells do not migrate around in the body. They're able to grab these foreign substances that might be triggering the flu, whether it's a virus, whether it's a bacterial infection or whatever. And you've created the situation where you're actually creating your own fever, fooling the body into thinking there is a fever, and it responds to that fever just as if it was a naturally caused fever. Now, as the treatment goes along, the water is going to cool off some, and so you have a kettle nearby, or you have a pitcher with hot water, and again, you just walk over to your patient, you remove these sheet and the blanket from around the feet like this. Throw it back up on his knees, out of your way. Remove the yoke, and then ask your patient to please move your feet to one side. And as he moves it to one side, you then take the kettle of hot water and you apply the water to the other side and swish the water with your hand as you're doing this, so that the water has an evenly mixed temperature and you don't burn your patient. Again, once the water is mixed back, simply bring the feet back to the center, replace your yoke again, and then bring down your blankets and your sheet to hold that temperature, hold that heat inside where it can do the best good. Now we're going to notch this treatment up once more. You're really going to try and create a hot fever. For one reason or another, the patient is not responding to the hot water as he should, and you want it to go a little higher. You have an electric kettle. You come around to the back of your patient, and you place this kettle underneath the chair, and you actually have a blanket surrounding the chair, so all that heat actually comes up over your patient. And you can leave that kettle there for the duration of the treatment. Now, to finish off the treatment, it's just reversing what you've done up to this point. You can leave the cold mint friction on the head, or excuse me, the cold cloth on the head. You may have been bathing his head with cold mitten friction, or excuse me, cold cloths to the head. But you may have just left that for the end of your treatment. I mentioned that before. So now we're going to unwind him. When we're done with this treatment, as I mentioned before, we're going to have him stand up. I'm going to give him a cold mitten friction, and I'm going to send him to bed. I'm going to help him go to bed, make sure that he's in bed and resting quietly before I leave him. Now we're down to the sheet. Before I go any further, at this point, I'm going to, I just remembered what I did wrong. I forgot. I'm going to back up here just to show you how you can also do this treatment. I'm going to go back one step, put the blanket back on. For those of you who want to take it one step further, this is very easy to do. You can buy one of these fomentation tents at different places, or you can make your own. What I have here is not a fomentation tent, I'm sorry, it's a hot foot bath tent. And I'm going to drape this over Emmanuel, over the chair and everything. And this creates almost like a miniature sauna. So I start here, bring it over, put it over his head, and then bring it down. There we go. Pull it tight above. I'd mentioned you could use a blanket if you need be, and at this point you can then place the steaming kettle, the electric kettle, underneath the chair, and you now have your sauna tent going on, and he will sweat profusely, again keeping his head cool at all times. You may even at this point want to put a fan on him to make sure that he stays cool. Well, let's go back to where we were before we introduce the tent here. I'm just going to bring it back up over his head. I'm going to unwrap him again, and now I'm going to get ready to give him the cold mitten friction, or I may just give him a sponge bath, or again I may just ask him to come to the shower with me and he'll take a tepid shower. You always want to finish a hot foot bath or any fever treatment with cold water. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, you take the cold water, you lift up 1 foot at a time, and you bathe the foot in ice water. You pour it over the foot. Be careful you don't get a knee-jerk reaction. And then you just take the foot, bring it out, and set it on the towel. Then you're ready to do the other side. Again, repeat the process. Lift the foot, bathe it in this ice-cold water, and then bring it outside the tub, put the tub to one side, and place the feet on the towel. And at this point you can dry them off. You can dry them off and send the patient to the bed, or you can then go the next step and give them a cold mitten friction. And we'll just quickly demonstrate that for you at this time. So we'll unwrap him from his sheet. I'll get you to stand up, Emmanuel. I then take these 2 mittens and I wring them out in the cold water that I have here. Starting at his feet, I then give him a brisk rub up his feet, both sides, I keep working towards the heart. I then take his arm and I do the same thing towards his trunk and towards his heart. I do the other hand, working briskly and quickly. I then do his back and chest as well and finish here. At this point, you escort your patient to the bedroom. You lay them down in a bed. You cover them with a sheet. You add maybe 1 or 2 more heavy blankets, and hopefully your patient will go sound asleep. And when he wakes up the next time, he'll feel that that flu that was just kind of sitting there doing nothing, this sickness that was just hanging in there for maybe a week, not getting any worse but not getting any better, suddenly he can sense after this deep sleep that he's feeling better. And of course, before he fades off, you'll want to take a moment and have a prayer with him. Well, thank you, Emmanuel, for helping me with this treatment.